Caring for our senior loved ones can be a thankless and very stressful job, but we're talking today about how caretaking could expose you to legal issues, guardianship, power of attorney, much more. Attorney Alexis Gardner joins us on Zoom today to talk about caring for our elderly family and friends. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning, Dave.
So just some general rules of thumb. If we're caring for someone or looking in on someone, either a loved one that we're related to or someone who we're not, what are some things we have to keep in mind to protect ourselves legally as they age?
Well, the first thing to remember is that Oklahoma is a mandatory reporting state. So just like with children, if you have any knowledge of a child being abused or neglected, you are required by law to call authorities and report it. It's the same thing with incapacitated persons and the elderly. So if you know that your aunt has an in-home health worker who is, leaving the house unkempt or not changing your bedpan or something like that, and you don't report it, then that's actually a crime.
Wow. And I knew that about children. I did know the law about children, but boy, about the elderly, that is so interesting to me and very good to know. We have a graphic of kind of the roadmap where we're going today, but one of the questions I had, if someone gets hurt or dies while we're watching over them, what are some things that could legally fall on us? I mean, do we need to be documenting things? What kind of documentation do we need to have if we're the one watching them?
Well, potentially, there are mechanisms where you can get legal authority to make decisions over what they call a ward and the ward's property. So for instance, you can get a guardianship over someone who's incapacitated or elderly. I had a client once whose son had some severe cognitive issues, and once he turned 18, she got a general guardianship so that she could manage his affairs. And sometimes right when our parents get elderly and maybe have some dementia, getting a guardianship paperwork is best so that you're legally recognized as someone who's able to make decisions. When you're, it's obviously you're not expected to be a doctor if you're not a doctor. Right? But if your job is to be a caretaker, then there are certain requirements that you're expected to meet at a standard of care, if you will. But if someone passes away, it's not like you're going to be strictly held liable as long as you were keeping up with the standard of care and making sure they were getting their medication and that there aren't, bed sores and those types of things, depending on the situation. But I'd say the main thing is reporting. If something doesn't seem right, you want to make sure you take that person to the doctor, because if they needed to go to the doctor and you didn't take them and then they end up passing away, you could have a big problem on your hands.
Wow. Guardianship versus power of attorney. I've heard, I guess, more in my just personal life about power of attorney than getting guardianship over someone. But can you kind of tell us the difference between getting power of attorney versus guardianship in Oklahoma? How do you do that?
Yes. So when it comes to guardianship, you have to go through a whole court process, right? And you can only get guardianship when someone is incapacitated, right? They are so sick, or their memory has lapsed so far, or maybe even they have substance abuse issue, and they can't make decisions for their own health and financial resources, right? And there are three different types of guardianship: a general one that can last indefinitely, a special guardianship, which is kind of a 30-day emergency thing, and then a limited guardianship, where say the person is capable of taking care of their own health needs, but maybe they're not capable of taking care of their financial resources. So it's limited to the ward or just the ward's property. With a power of attorney, that's something that you can print off online right now and sign off on it and say, oh, I'm going out of the country for 6 months and I am giving my sister the power to kind of handle some of my finances while I'm gone. That's something we can sign off. I don't have to be incapacitated in some way. And it's not something you have to go through a judge to have a judge sign off on a guardianship order.
That's a big difference.
So a power of attorney is, yes, a little less formal, less involved.
In the power of attorney, you have to have the person you're having a power of attorney over, you have to have their express permission, right?
Yes, yes. So if you don't have someone's express permission, then that comes, say, in the time of a guardianship. Sometimes we have, parents who don't necessarily know what's going on. Sometimes they don't remember who we are, right? But then you have to provide them notice that you're seeking guardianship over them. And maybe on that day when they get served with the guardianship paperwork, they're like, what? You're trying to take over my my finances? What's this about, right? And then they have the opportunity to be heard about the guardianship and contest it potentially, and the judge might still grant you guardianship over your parent. But with the power of attorney, no, that's something you agree to.
All right. Well, Alexis Gardner, attorney, thank you so much for joining us today, and very interesting and helpful information as always. We appreciate it.